Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yeah, so as we approach toward the completion of the course, we have done most of it, and as we approach toward the completion of the course, there are few minor things we will do before we wrap up the course. So far we have looked into the concept of the new media, how it evolved, the terminology, the concept of newness, the biases of communication, models of communication, so on and so forth. Our aim has been so far to equip you with tools so that you are better able to understand the changes that has been rendered possible by the new media in the context of our material and social lives, and how the content and the purpose in turn influences and shapes the way we use media technologies. So, we will briefly talk about a few other concepts. Some of them have already been discussed in the sessions that we did before, like biases of communication, for example, digital divide, filter bubble, and so on and so forth. So, we kind of already wrapped up, like we kind of already did the bulk of the course. So, we are, as I said, like we are approaching completion, and I will wrap it up like with elaborating a couple of these concepts. So, I will quickly look into, for the first session, I will quickly look into one of the key readings that concern new media and the internet, and that is particularly pertinent to young students who hopefully are taking this course, especially the millennials and the digital natives. So, this particular reading by Dana Boyd is called Participating in the Always On Lifestyle. So, the link or the bibliographic reference to the reading will be made available to you. Yeah, but I will quickly discuss the reading and try to tease out some of the important points that Boyd discusses here, and this is, as I said, has very important resonance with the way we live our lives in the online realm. So, in the beginning of the essay, Boyd talks about how being online does not necessarily means being connected to the network all the time. She also talks about how one's always onness, and this is a concept that Boyd floats in her essay, like this is the phenomena of being online all the time, like you keep your mobile data always on, if you keep your internet always on the computer. So, that is something Dana Boyd calls the always onness, the phenomena of being online all the time. So, she also talks about how one's always oneness does not mean necessarily that she is always accessible to everyone. So, she makes this distinction between just being always on and being accessible. So, as for example, I personally do not prefer to stay online for a longer period of time on WhatsApp or on email, for example, but I also have these important people. I am talking about myself in person, but like we could probably look it from a broader lens, and I might probably argue that someone would have important people, an important person in one's lives who one would want to stay in touch through emails or WhatsApp all the time. So, what like one often does in this context is like I am trying to, like as I said, like it is a personal example that I have dragged in, but you could probably move back a little and look into the scheme of things from a very broader perspective. So, what one does is like they just turn off the internet and like open the WhatsApp, like they are all like they are on and off, they traverse between being on and being offline. So, then I reply to whoever I want to reply and then close WhatsApp and then turn on the internet. So, what I am trying to draw your attention to is you can type your WhatsApp message or email message while you are offline, and then you can turn your internet or data connection, whatever, and the message just goes through. So, thus the message gets sent, but I will not be shown online at all. So, in other words, I am accessible, but I am not online. So, in this way I am not online to everybody, but I am just online to certain people whose messages, whose emails I choose to respond to. Other hand, I love to keep surfing the internet almost all the time. So, again what Boyd draws our attention to, the context specificity of certain networks and certain media. So, I might be online and surfing the internet, but I am not available on WhatsApp or other media platforms, say for example. So, I find myself scrolling through the Instagram, for example, like these are just examples, or just reading random pins on Pinterest, but I often find myself battling sleep with the phone in my hand. I do not know I have to sleep, but still I continue scrolling through the feeds. So, like these examples, what these examples illustrate is the fact that being online and being offline, again, like these are not, these are kind of two faces of the same coin. As I said, like what these examples illustrate is what may loosely be termed as the context collapse, and context collapses occur when various different contexts collide together. Like these the examples that I have just cited are the examples of different contexts in which we make ourselves either available or non-available on the media platforms. So, there are specific situations and specific examples where Boyd says that these contexts overlap and contexts do collapse. For example, if a person again like it is the best way to understand this is to, like if I give you more concrete examples, and because this concerns the online way, on the online realm, most of these examples are something that each of us could relate to. So, for example, if a person posts something or comment on something on the social media, she makes sure that his comment will be interpreted in the same way that she intends to. And if in this context, if you recall the models of communication that we have discussed, both in the context of traditional media, broadcast media and the new media, this is particularly important. Like when someone, and if we look in through the Stuart Hall's model that we have already discussed, and if you recall the encoding decoding features, if we may call it features of media, the encoding decoding thing. So, when we comment, when we type, when we respond certain, when we post something or we respond to certain posts on the internet, we code our message in a particular way, and in more often than not we expect that the coding that goes into the messaging or posting, whatever that is, people would interpret our posts or messages along the same vein. However, different people might interpret these in different ways, in different contexts, depending on their personal references, point of references and personal contexts. And this is precisely what Stuart Hall demonstrated through his model of the encoding decoding, that the contexts of encoding may totally differ from that of decoding. I often find myself very reluctant to share my personal opinions just because of the fear of how people are going to interpret it. Like then, I mean that is again like a personal example, but that is something of an anxiety or concern that most of us in our digital online behavior would often encounter, like the fear, the anxiety that how people are going to read us. Are they going to judge us? Are they going to be mad about the post that I just shared, and so on and so forth. So, these are some of the anxieties that pop up in our minds when we share things on the internet. And as like, and this is also something that we discussed through the course of this course, that the overlap between the personal and the private lives that has been rendered possible by the digital networks and the social media and so on. So, there is this overlap, there is this collapse where the personal life converges with the public life. So, whenever we bring things online from our personal selves onto the public selves, which is to say the digital platform. So, we are always already anxious, like how we are going to be made sense of. So, this also happens on one-on-one conversation on online platforms, in chatting networks and so on and so forth. Probably happened with all of us, like when you say things to people with certain intentions and they totally read it against the line and they misinterpret it, and there is a possibility of miscommunication and so on. Yeah, so this is what we in the media discourse is often referred to as the context collapse, and context collapse creates confusion among people, miscommunication, misspeaking, misunderstanding, and so on and so forth. So, people in fact might be using the same words, the same linguistic register, but they might yield different meanings to different peoples, and they have a whole different set of contingencies and divergent meanings and so on and so forth. So this difference in interpretation and the different ways of understanding, as I said, and to put in Stuart's Hall word, the difference between the encoding and decoding is what leads to this context collapse. So, Boyd talks about how more the public we are, as in when she says more the public we are, as in as we increasingly bring our personal stuff onto the internet. The moment we share a post on the Facebook, we put pictures on Pinterest and so on and so forth. So, these are our personal selves. The more we carve off privacy. So, there is this also, this is something we touched upon tangentially when going through the course. Like this is I would not outrightly call it breach of privacy, but there is this fine line which is now being blurred between what is personal, what is private, and what is public. So, that is one very key idea. So, I mean, as I said, like the course, now that it has come to a completion, I am trying to give you certain tools, certain analytical tools with which I expect you to be better able to analyze the things on the internet. So, this I think the way Boyd furnishes her idea of context collapse. This could be one of the tools for your analytic exploration of the digital realm. So, as like Boyd says, the more public we become, the more are we can carve off privacy. There is this collapse on two levels: the personal and the private collapse, number one, and also the context in which the messages are encoded and decoded. So, the internet, as you can imagine, is this big universe with this abundance of things, with information thriving everywhere, both relevant and irrelevant, and also if you are aware, this concept of the digital nomad, that like say for example, we need an information, we open the internet, we Google, and we see the Wikipedia page which has hundreds of hyperlinks. So, once we are in the internet, we navigate our ways through this series of hyperlinks, and imagine we start out our navigation on the internet with one search, but then we navigate through hyperlinks into multiple other things. So, some of this information we did not have a clue of when we started out our search. So, this is kind of a nomadism, if we are able to call it. So, this is a kind of a traveling navigation nomadism, whatever you call. So, so internet is this huge universe of things, information, which opens the possibility for us to navigate. So, the information age, like, and this is something that we have been stressing right from the onset, has enabled us as users to go beyond, and again, like I am trying to reiterate the Stuart Hall and the other models of communications that we have discussed. So, it pushes us to go beyond from being mere recipients of information, and it is kind of pushing us to become active information providers. Think of, right before this we did the session on indie journalism and new media journalism and so on and so forth, and in this context, if you think about citizen journalism and so on and so forth, like people see things, record things on their phones, send it off somewhere, and it get published, and that makes news. So, as I said, like this is like as we quit to be just recipients of information, we produce information which makes it to news. So, we are information providers, and for that matter we are also information collaborators, say for example, in the case of Wikipedia. multiple people, strangers to say the less, like people collaborate from across the world, and they crowdsource information to make wholesome Wikipedia entry. So, so we are information providers, we are information collaborators, and so on and so forth. And while we do that as social beings, as creators of information, as creators, producers, or collaborators of information, we adjust our online presence while filtering some of our views which may affect our online identity. And again, what I'm trying to draw your attention to is again something that we have already discussed, which is to say the concept of the filter bubble. There are certain posts, for example, we self-edit, we self-censor before posting on the internet. Like there are certain pictures, say for example, if you've taken a selfie or you've taken a picture with a bunch of friends, and then if you think that it wouldn't be well received by your friends or networks or relations on your Facebook network, you self-censor it. So, what you post on your social media, which is to say the information from your private lives, is exceedingly being filtered, which affects your online identity. In other words, we maneuver our identities, like our private self and the public self, like these are of course blurred, as I said, but then these are still two different avatars. So, we maneuver our identities, public identities, online identities. So, our online persona does not necessarily reflect our real persona. So, there is this aspirational self, we want to be something, not that we want to be something, let me put it in other words, there's this imagination of an aspirational self. We want to look like something on the online network, So, like we post certain pictures, we post certain, we share certain posts, we post certain pictures in order so that our online self is incongruous with my imagination of my aspirational self. So, I want to project myself to the world, I want to project myself to my set of Facebook friends in a certain light, in a certain way. So, I would choose my post, I would choose my pictures on Pinterest, on Facebook accordingly. I will make myself appear the way I envisage to fashion my aspirational self. So, I am trying to get at these self censorship mechanism, self filtration mechanism, which in short may be referred to as filter bubble. Of course, as I said, we already discussed filter bubble, then we will go a little bit in details into the idea. So, on the one hand, as active recipients of information, the users also enjoy constant information update from their contacts on social media, like the phone always pops, you have messages, you have WhatsApp post, you have this post, that post, and so on and so forth. These need to stay updated with relevant information all the time, and this is somewhat what some like media scholars refer to as the FOMO syndrome, FOMO, fear of missing out. So, we are with the ubiquity of the internet, we are in the fear of missing out something. So, as like now if we go back to the Dana Boyd reading, the always on lifestyle, I mean the characteristic, what characterizes the always on lifestyle is the ubiquity of the online presence. Like you are, like one is as active participants on the digital media and social networking sites, one is always in the anxiety that I am missing out something. If I am not online, if I do not check things online, I am missing out something. So, the world out there in the digital world, let's say the digital world out there is moving fast, and if I am not online, I am missing out of something. So, this is the FOMO, as in the FOMO syndrome. So, I need to stay updated all the time, I need to stay online all the time, and in doing so, this often leads us as users to distractions, to shifting our attentions to things that we do not necessarily need. Say for example, if when we are buying things on the internet, when Amazon and we discussed this in the context of bots and artificial intelligence and things like that. When Amazon says people who bought this or also bought this, we click on certain links, although we do not necessarily need those things. This is also one idea, like the FOMO syndrome, and in the context of the filter bubble, this could also serve as one of your analytic tool in reading the discourse of the new media. So, the quality of information age toughens the task of social media users to stay relevant all the time, and as like, so it's challenging, it's tough, as I'm trying to suggest here, is like to stay relevant and to filter out the relevant information that only matters to you, like, because in this huge universe, I mean, this is a metaphor that I am very consciously using, like it's a huge universe. There is a proliferation of hyperlinks, there is massive colossal amount of information. So, we are lost, we are kind of lost in this digital information. So, there is this again this kind of anxiety, this challenge to stay relevant all the time and to stay to filter the relevant information from the universe. So, Dana Boyd in her piece quotes that, quote Dana Boyd here, different social contexts mean different relationships to being always on. The context shift may not only due to space, but because of the social construction in our heads, and this is very important, end quote. So, I'll read out the quotation again, and we'll try to discuss this in the light of Dana Boyd's ideas. So, different social contexts mean different relationships. That is what I said when we started out this session, like the question of interpreting different things differently and the being misinterpreted, misunderstood, and so on. So, different social contexts mean different relationships to being always on. So, this context shift, you can think in the light of context collapse also. This context shift may not only be due to space, but because of the social construction in our head. So, it is not because of spatial, geographical, or the context itself, but also the kind of disposition, which is what Boyd refers to as the social construction in our heads, which is to say that dispositions that render certain kind of meaning making possible. We make meanings of things that we read because of certain dispositions that we have in our head. So, that is what Boyd is referring to as the social construction. This statement of Boyd can be seen when we manage conversations through various chat boxes, chat platforms with people from different aspects or different like strangers from different aspects of life, work, and so on and so forth. So, say for example, when we chat with our parents, we use a different tone. When we chat with our colleagues from work, we have a different tone. If it's your siblings, if it's your gym buddy or something like that. So, we have different modes of talking, we have different modes of interacting. So, interaction involves a kind of social skill, and we kind of step our feet into different shoes. We take different colors when we interact with people from different walks of lives. So, in other words, I constantly keep drifting myself away from the topics through each chat window, just in terms of content, but also in terms of the tonality and the mode of addressal, how I address each of these people from different windows depending on where they come from. So, I constantly drift myself away from topics. The content about what I speak and the way I speak, it is kind of a constant drift while I converse with each one of them. And while doing this, I have to be careful that the message that I am sending, in doing so I have to be constantly be aware that the message that I am sending to A does not get copied to the into the chat box while I am sending message to B, for example. And also remember that what I am sending to A is totally irrelevant to what I am sending to B. So, this is also, if we think that this is also kind of one challenges to staying relevant all the time. So, if you look into this multiple chat windows that might be open when we are chatting to different people. So, we are talking with each set, we are talking to each people, but the information that we are disseminating is kind of almost irrelevant, like the information I am sharing with one is almost irrelevant to the other. But the social media has made all these contexts to come together on one platform. We have friends from school, colleges, our parents, our spouses, our relations, our colleagues, and so on, and we just, this is convergence, if we may call it, on the social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth. So, we share a different relationship with a member of each sphere of our life, as I said, and that reflects on the kind of messages that we post. So, we enjoy a different set of interactions, we share a different set of relationships, and that reflects on the topics and the content that we share with each one of them. But with the social media like Facebook or Twitter, when there is this convergence where everyone from every walk of your life, like the universe of people that you know, your entire network is now on Facebook or Twitter. So, what this does is kind of decontextualizes, is kind of decontextualize the content of what I share. Like, we do not necessarily address things to one particular set of our relations. It's kind of a public post, as the Facebook post is often referred to as. Yeah, so I have often found myself in a situation where I refrain from posting an inside joke because it might not be relevant to the entire community of the Facebook friends. And for this, in order to remedy this, if we may call it, we have now WhatsApp groups where we have smaller groups of people. We make those WhatsApp groups so that relevant in the smaller scale. So, while posting on the social media, sometimes we even filter as ourselves more and more while posting anything, not only because of the relevance, but also because it might have an insight to certain private affairs of our life that we do not want everyone to know. So, this is also again like if you think of the censorship mechanism that is in place in new media, this is something that we have already discussed again. So, we have this kind of censoring tendency, like number one, as I said, like how people would judge me, how people would interpret me if I post this, what kind of reaction it would be get, number one. And number two, also I am in this constant dilemma, like this is a part of my private life, to what extent of my private life am I going to bring it onto the public on Facebook. So, as I said, so not necessarily because it might give insight into certain things. Number one is this anxiety of bringing private into public, and also number two is this anxiety of being relevant. So, these are the two anxieties. I think that this is also something that Boyd talks about in her essay. To avoid such situations of irrelevance, people often refrain from posting certain views and prefer keeping it to themselves just to suit the broader dominant perspective of the society. This is something, if you could relate this to the idea of filter bubbles. Say if you are smoking with your friends, for example, you do not necessarily, if it's a selfie or a groupie featuring you smoking with your friends, you do not post it on the Facebook fearing how your parents might react to the picture. So, this is a kind of this censoring, self-censoring mechanism, although it is perfectly fine, it is perfectly legal to post on Facebook what you want to post, except for barring a few exceptions. So, where filtering ourselves from posting anything of irrelevance is one solution to the issue of context collapse. Like we filter ourselves to be relevant, we filter ourselves in order for the contexts not to collapse. So, another could be our engagement with the homophilous groups available online, where we feel to discuss our ideas that we think resonate with others in the same group. As I said, like our Facebook friends now, like if you imagine the for example, the Reddit group or the Yahoo chat groups that we used to not used to have, they are pretty much still there, but they are not just as popular as Facebook. But then certain chat groups and certain Reddit groups would these groups were made so that they could make sense to a certain user base that shared the same set of interests. So, user groups, chat groups were made according to the the relevance and the interest of what the users shared. So, on the contrary, in Facebook what we have is this convergence of, as I referred to as the homophilous group, like this literally there is everyone, no matter what interest she shares, no matter who he or she is related, who or how you are related to one, like there is this massive universe of friends, like as I said, homophilous. So, the group members strengthen and support each other's ideas and shut out on any contradictory information. And this is something when we talked about Elie Pariser, and I shared with you the link of Elie Pariser's YouTube lecture, which is I insist that you would watch, and that's like exceedingly becoming relevant in the context of our online behavior. Like this whole tendency that when we share things on the groups, group members strengthen and support each other's ideas and they shut out themselves. They are generally speaking opposed to any contrarian views. So, online communities of people belonging to similar circle, be it cultural, be it political, are more inclined to interact with the same set of people. Like we interact with people, we find friends online based on the kind of interest that we share. So, in other words, we pick our friends, we make friends with people who share the same kind of interest. This can be, if we take cue from Dana Boyd, this can be read as an example of the consequence of context collapse. Yeah, so online communities of people belonging to a similar social circle, like as I said, cultural, like gym members, political ideas, political party supporters, can be seen as a consequence of context collapse. So, in order for the contexts not to collapse, so we are, as I said, we are in the fear of missing out. We are in two sets of anxieties, like to be relevant and in the fear of the contexts might collapse. We are desperate to be relevant all the time, and in order to be relevant, in order for our posts, so that our posts are relevant, we increasingly mix, interact, socialize, make friends with people who already share the same set of interests. So there is this disposition that we are talking about here. Like we are already disposed to the kind of people that we want to socialize on the social media. We do not as such make friends, we are already disposed to who would be our friends. While this may be good in ways that it gives platform to users and it makes things easier on us in terms of relevance, as long as the relevance question is concerned, wherein like-minded people befriend like-minded people. Also, we have to be careful here a little bit. It might also give rise to tensions online as well, when one interest groups, it conflicts with others, and that is like also like if you look into some of these recent phenomena of lulls like hate speech, lulls, flack, and trolling, like internet trolling, like it's so huge phenomenon now. Like this is a consequence of this phenomenon of filter bubble. Like when you exist in small filter, as users of social media, we exist in small bubbles, small spherules, and when we shut ourselves off from any contrary worldview, what happens naturally, understandably, is it leads to tensions online and offline also, when we meet people from who have a completely different set of belief system. Yes, so in the earlier session we talked about the anxiety of online tensions and how it often break up because of misinterpretations and the on the part of the users who happen not to open up to contrarian viewpoints. So, speaking of which, we will talk about one thing again, like as I said in these concluding sessions, I am giving out certain analytical tools for you to be able to better analyze the discourse of new media. So, one such tools in the context of online tensions, which I wanted to draw your attention to. Yeah, so it is important in this context to learn about this one another important concept, which is to say the netiquette. Netiquette is Netiquette. Netiquette is the etiquette, let us say the etiquette of online behavior, like how you behave online, and there are certain etiquette and certain codes of conducts, like these are not laws, these are not something which is legal, but it works on a kind of a consensus upon kind of a public sphere, where people agree that this sounds good, this looks good, this is something that you should not do online, this is something you should not say to someone online. So, these are kind of codes of conducts, if we may call it. So, this is one very important aspect that governs our behavior on the digital realm, in terms of, as we in the last session we talked about the possibility of conflicts and tensions breaking out online that often happen because of misinterpretation or misunderstanding. So, in this context, the netiquette I think is an important tool to make sense of how contrary groups negotiate their ideas, beliefs, and so on and so forth in the online world. But speaking of netiquette, like again, like I'll give you a small example here. For example, the word LOL, LOL, which is an acronym for laughing out loudly, like word or the acronym LOL, like laughing out loud, or BRB, which is an acronym for be right back. I mean, these are acronyms that are very internet specific. We use this kind of a lingo, we use this kind of a linguistic register only when we chat or talk online, when we comment online. These do not have any valency as such in the day to day or one to one traditional mode of communication. Like we do not say lol or BRB when we speak to a person that we meet on the street, or for example, when I am teaching this course. I mean, these words are a strict no. But then again, I mean, these words are a strict no, not because these are slang words or something. These are a no because these are not conventional to use in the one to one or a more formal kind of a setup. So, on the contrary, these words are very well accepted in the context of digital online communication. So, this would give you an idea of what I mean by netiquette. So, this is an etiquette, this is an unwritten set of rules, not rules, kind of unwritten set of conduct, unwritten sense of etiquette that governs your protocol of interaction online. Yeah, speaking of which, I mean the examples of the acronyms that I just brought in, LOL and BRB, like the examples illustrate that what is acceptable in the real conversational realm might not be accepted online, or vice versa. What is accepted online, like the acronyms that are accepted online, is not acceptable in the real conversational setup. So, there are these specific, again, like I am drawing your attention to the specificity. I mean, if there is one thing that I expect the course to have done to you, is to have rendered you the skill to analyze whether new media is really new. I mean, that is something we started this course out with. Having done this course all so far, and now that we are almost concluding, I would expect you to have a basic, a general sense to be able to evaluate and comment on the newness of the new media, whether it is new. And in order to do that, I mean, these tools, these analytical tools that I am speaking on in the concluding sessions, like the always on lifestyle, the filter bubble, the digital divide, the netiquette, and one other concept of remediation that I am going to talk about shortly. I mean, these are analytical tools that will help you analyze through some of this set of problems, and like new media is a completely new beast, so to say. So, like these tools will give you certain hands on how to deal with, analyze, write, or speak about these new coordinate of media. Yes, speaking of netiquette, again, like you could probably think of, like I brought in two examples of the two acronyms. Like you could think of maybe by yourself of other examples of what you think are acceptable in the new media setup, but is not so much accepted in real life, or vice versa, what is accepted in real life is not accepted online. There could be a number of examples. This is something of your this is something of an exercise that you could perform yourself. But before before that, let me give you a more concrete example of the context specificity, like what does the new media renders possible in terms of netiquette. I will give you a very interesting example here. If you look into the entry on Hinduism in Uncyclopedia, do not confuse this with any encyclopedia. This is Uncyclopedia, spelt as UN, un, instead of the EN in encyclopedia. So, this is UNCYCLOPEDIA. Uncyclopedia is a satirical website that parodies Wikipedia. But I thought that the entry on Hinduism would be especially relevant to you, given the current political climate. I mean, Hinduism, Hindutva, and all of that has certain kind of valency and purchase, and I think this would be pertinent to look into the entry as it appears in the Uncyclopedia website, and reflect on that in terms of our certain ideas of netiquette. So, as I said, Uncyclopedia is a satirical website that parodies Wikipedia. So, if you type in Uncyclopedia and try to Google it up, like it looks almost like another Wikipedia page, except for that it is completely satirical, and the information there are satirical, of course. It also makes fun of, it kinds of ridicules and lampoons the kind of the Wikipedia approach. I will read it out from the Uncyclopedia website itself, and I quote from the website itself. It says, Uncyclopedia is a satirical website that parodies Wikipedia. It styles itself as the content free encyclopedia. Like there is no content, as I said, like what you read there is false, is necessarily false. I mean, the website, any entry on Uncyclopedia is false, and the way that it addresses the tone is satirical. So, it says it styles itself as content free encyclopedia, end quote, and and as you realize it kind of parodies Wikipedia's slogan of the free encyclopedia, like Wikipedia calls itself the free encyclopedia. So, it is a take on It is a take on Wikipedia's slogan free encyclopedia, and encyclopedia calls itself the content free encyclopedia. Perhaps satirizing Wikipedia's principle of purported neutrality, like neutrality, I emphasize neutrality here and I call it purported neutrality, because there are a bunch of scholars who have pointed out the phenomena of digital divide within Wikipedia itself. For example, Mark Graham, cultural geographer and a digital humanities scholar, he for example writes about, and you can Google things up if you are curious here. So, Mark Graham for example writes on how the information based, like how the information in the Wikipedia are sourced by certain people from certain demographic. For example, if you look into, if you have a bird's eye view of the contributors to Wikipedia, more often than not you will have most of the contributors are white males from the English speaking world. So, you have to look into this sociological aspect of information building, and like this is again like one particular trope when you when you try to think about digital divide. So, it is a question of divide, it is a kind of discrimination. So, if you look into this sociology of discrimination, you have to wonder, you have to reflect on why does it that mostly white English speaking male happen to be the most account for the most of the contributors of Wikipedia. So, Mark Graham, as I said, he does this kind of what he kind of profiles demographically and also otherwise. He kind of does a profiling of people, like the information network, like where does the information come from, who codes most of the information, who contributes the most of the information on the internet, and so on and so forth. So, if you look into Wikipedia as it claims itself to be neutral, and this is one particular point that I have been reiterating since the beginning, like the liberalizing aspect of the new media, like the Wikipedia purportedly allows anyone, literally anyone across the globe to contribute anything, and in doing so Wikipedia guarantees a certain extent of neutrality. Like Wikipedia also is known to be hosting or featuring contrary viewpoints. So, Wikipedia, as it says, it does not, any Wikipedia entry for that matter is not a research article, it just coalesces different existing information and it guarantees you a certain extent of neutrality, because it hosts information purportedly from any people. But then, like behind, in the back of this claim to neutrality, as scholars like Mark Graham would show, whole information loop, whole information network, not just Wikipedia. Like if you study the character of the internet in general, they are demographically profiled. So to say, there are certain people, there are certain privilege. For example, like being white English speaking male is an advantage, is a privilege that renders the people of that particular demographic group to be able to contribute the maximum amount of information to Wikipedia. So, this is a privilege. So, like scholars like Mark Graham would draw your attention to this rhetoric of neutrality, that claim to neutrality is generally associated with Wikipedia. So, perhaps satirizing Wikipedia's principle of this purported neutrality, like as I said, like scholars like Graham have kind of debunked this claim, and this neutrality is meant to achieve only by hyperlinking verifiable sources without any original contribution. Like as I said, like Wikipedia does not guarantee that the content in the Wikipedia is originally researched, it just coalesces, it just gathers, it just amasses the information which is already there in the internet or other sources. So, it kind of achieves that purported neutrality only by hyperlinking verifiable sources. So, perhaps satirizing this, what the encyclopedia entry typically does, it begins with two cautionary notes. First, and I quote, "For those without comedic tastes, the so called experts at Wikipedia have an article on the subject," end quote. And the second is a plain warning, I quote, "This article is designed to offend. If you are not offended by it, please edit it so that you will be in the future," end quote. So, like any encyclopedia entry for that matter would begin by these two cautionary notes, like the so called Wikipedia experts, like again this if you look into the social construction of an expertise, like who gets to speak for what subject, and this I do not remember if I have touched upon this in the earlier lectures. So, imagine I might have read all the textbooks on medicine, all the medicine textbooks, but I still would not be write a prescription which a doctor would be able to, unless I have a medical registration, like a certificate of registration or something. So, I might be the most conversant person on earth when it comes to medicinal textbooks. For example, I know all the therapeutic values of all the medicines concerned. I know the therapeutic values of all the medicines in the world, like, but then still I would not be able to write a prescription unless I have a certain piece of paper that accredits me, that deems me the expertise and the authority to write a prescription. So, there is this social construction of deeming someone an expert, the social construction of expertise. So, if you think along those lines, the experts at Wikipedia, and it has already been kind of naturalized in the digital era, it has kind of been naturalized now, because when we do not know about a certain thing, the first thing we do is to Google it up, and more often than not the first entry that pops up on our computer screens would be a Wikipedia entry. So, Wikipedia has become this like so called a proxy, like a shorthand for experts, for expertise. So, what the encyclopedia does, as I said, it begins on two cautionary notes. Any entry whatsoever you pull up on the encyclopedia, it reads, "For those without comedic tastes, the so called experts at Wikipedia have an article." So, in other words, it is suggesting this, we are not claiming an expertise to what you are just going to read below. At this stage, this is a command for the team. I will pull up an example, like I will show an image of an encyclopedia entry here, so that the students can see it. So, the first cautionary note being an indication that if you do not have a sense of comedy, you leave this page and you go and consult the experts at Wikipedia. So, the Wikipedia alternatively has an article on this. So, this article what you are going to read below is for those who have a sense of comedy and who are able to digest that. And the second cautionary note, for example, it reads, "This article," and mind the wording very carefully here, this article is designed to offend. So, this article is meant to offend the reader, and if you are not offended by it, please edit it. Likewise, like as in Wikipedia, anyone can edit an article, encyclopedia also allows an user to edit, and it says you edit it. If it is not adequately offensive, if it is not offending you, you edit the article so that you would be offended in the future. So, accordingly the instruction, so you understand the purpose, you understand the rationale, the encyclopedia entry, whatever that might be. So, accordingly the instruction, indeed satirical, for editing the entry flashes right at the top of the page, and it reads, "Wikia bots with amazingly high privilege levels," like very important wording here. Like you look at the nuances and you look at the way this wording has been, these wordings have been coined. I just now spoke about the privilege of being allowed to do certain things in terms of creating or disseminating knowledge, the privilege of being able to source information. So, that is a privilege in the context of which I invoked Mark Graham and such like. So, the entry reads, Wikipedia bots with amazingly high privilege levels have been skulking around the website these evenings. If you are unable to log in with your traditional username, it might be that the same name is used by someone with a different email address elsewhere at Wikia. Wikia is like an imaginary website, of course, the reference being to Wikipedia. So, it says it's someone with the same name is being used by someone with a different email address elsewhere at Wikia, in which case please try unusername instead to edit encyclopedia. I mean, of course, it does not mean anything. If you look into the semantics of it, semantically it does not mean anything. Like, what is an unusername? You have to understand the tenor of the satire here, and the target of the satire being Wikipedia's claim to purported neutrality and the liberalizing aspect that I have been mentioning on the one hand, and also the tendency, also the process that is in place to record one's username and IP address when you edit. So, what in the context of Wikipedia looks liberalizing, and the promise that anyone can edit and anyone can make any edits whatsoever, actually comes with a caveat. The caveat being you are allowed to edit as long as you log in with your username and IP address. So, there is again, like I think I mentioned this in one of the earlier lectures, that Wikipedia allows you to edit as long as you disclosing your username and IP address. So, there is this element of surveillance. So, there is aspect of surveillance here. So, Wikipedia keeps a track of which edits you make, which users are making which edits. So, this encyclopedia does not require you to record your username or IP address for that matter at all. So, that is why it says, like, if you cannot log in with your username or IP or whatever that is, it may be because of the fact that someone is using that in Wikia, in which case please try unusername, as in the indication being we do not need your username or IP address for that matter, instead to edit encyclopedia. So, that is the instruction that reads. So, the reason that I wanted to bring this up is to give you a sense of the tenor of encyclopedia. So, again, as you understand that this ridicules Wikipedia's policy of recording IP address at the time of entries, as I said, and which is susceptible to geomapping, like the Wikipedia maps you geographically as soon as you start editing a wiki page. So, unusername, as it has been referred to here, is presumably a metonymy for IP address. So, as I said, they are saying we do not require your IP address to make edits on the encyclopedia. So, following this set of instructions, the main entry reads, and this is, mind you, the entry on Hinduism. This is the entry on Hinduism in encyclopedia. It is kind of a big quotation which you see on your screen. So, this is what the entry on Hinduism in encyclopedia begins with. So, Hinduism is the name for a pack of gods which can include ants to elephants and your mother-in-law. Being, it is misspelled, that is why it comes with Sikh in parenthesis, which is an acronym for misspelling or something. So, never mind, overlook the misspelling here. Being a Hindu and playing Pokemon are very similar, in the sense that no matter how many Hindu deities, again a spelling mistake, sorry, you have inside of your house, no matter how many Hindu deities you have inside of your house, it will take forever to get them all. Some Silicon Valley based life forms claim it is also a religion. Hinduism has been cited in the Guinness Book of Records as the only religion where the number of gods outweigh the number of followers. The main purpose of a Hindu's life is to be more like the gods, by having promiscuous sex and multiplying until the number of their offspring reaches close to the number of gods. So, you see the fun and the tone of satire involved here, and of course, the entry that you have on encyclopedia has no truth claim whatsoever. It is not claiming any right or access to truth, like it is fun information, it is making fun not just of Hinduism, literally of anything that you would be able to pull up on the encyclopedia. So, in sum, the entry derides the social fabric of Hinduism and goes on to reconfigure the Hindu pantheon, now comprising ants, elephants, one's mother-in-law and what not. So, as you realize that any of these statements what encyclopedia features and which is out there on the internet ready for anybody to pull up, it is open access, it is right there on the internet and it is easy to access and it is not banned whatsoever. So, any of these statements one can say with certitude sound offensive. I mean, these are highly offensive statements to make, like Hindu pantheon includes ants, mother-in-laws and so on, like the Hindus have promiscuous sex so that their offsprings are multiplied close to the number of deities and number of gods. Hinduism appears in the Guinness Book of World Records where the number of gods exceed the number of followers. I mean, these are fun statements, but these are offensive nevertheless. I mean, especially for practicing Hindu for that matter, these are highly offensive statements. So, yet as I said, this page is open access, this page is on the web and visitors are expected to be able to rationalize this thoroughly transgressive insult or trolling. It is a troll for the sake of what we call like lulz, L-U-L-Z, like you make fun of someone. So, in other words, what is offensive in the real politic, like in the real political sense, like in the traditional political setup, seems to be perfectly acceptable on the digital realm. I mean, people are happy with it. I mean, if you say any one of these statements publicly, for example, like the broadcast media, for example, if you say any of these statements on even for that matter Facebook, I am not sure, like that would probably be, you would probably be trolled and someone would report you to the Facebook till you are blocked. But worse still, if you think of the broadcast media, someone saying this on the TV or the radio, that might incite, that might invoke a riot, that might kindle a riot. So, in other words, and there are examples like from the recent pasts in the current political climate, like this is something that you could well relate to. So, in other words, what I am trying to stress here is what is offensive in the real world, so to say. I am not necessarily gesturing toward the broadcast media, like in real life, in real conversations, seems to be perfectly acceptable here. Here again, not necessarily internet. I said like it might be read as something offensive even if you write this on Facebook. I am talking about the specificity, the platform specificity, if I may call it, the specificity of the particular platform where a certain type of conversation, where a particular type of articulation is accepted. I am talking about encyclopedia precisely in in all its specificity. So, what is offensive in one platform is acceptable in another, at least as like encyclopedia, like in certain platforms certain things are acceptable. So, the general netiquette on the virtual place often contravenes the conventional etiquette rules in the real life. That is the whole idea, that is why I brought up this prose. The reason being I wanted to demonstrate to you how the conventional etiquette rules in the real life often contravenes with what we are referring to here as the netiquette. So, in fact, different platforms have different local decorum. as I said, like this is very specific to encyclopedia. This might not be workable on Facebook, Twitter. This would not be sportingly accepted the way it is accepted in encyclopedia. If you go to Facebook, it might meet trolls, it might attract trolls and flags. So, what I am trying to suggest is different platforms have different local decorum depending on their subscribers, depending on their agendas, depending on their participants, depending on their users. So, the community of users kind of determine what is accepted in one platform and what is not accepted in the other. What is considered rude in one group may be acceptable in another. For the Usenet group, again like it is a networking group which is kind of obsolete now, used to be popular like maybe 10-15 years back. It is an Usenet group called alt.fleming, alt-Fleming, alt.flaming. So, it is a Usenet networking group. In the context of altnet Fleming, this is one scholar, not one scholar actually, a duo like a couple of them, Kollock and Smith. They posit in the context of alt Fleming, they posit and I quote, violating decorum would mean engaging in a sober, restrained discussion. So, that is the expectation if you were ever an alt.Fleming member, you were expected to violate decorum, because the idea would violating decorum would mean engaging in a sober, restrained discussion. So, you are not discussing unless you are violating and offending and you are transgressive. So, besides this aspect of lulls, we call this LULZ, as I said, lulls like making fun, trolling, being transgressive and so on, and you laugh out at something or someone. So, besides the aspect of lulls, 2 points in this encyclopedia entry like the longish quote that we just discussed catch our attention. First, the sarcasm in the phrase, the main purpose of Hindus life is having promiscuous sex and multiplying. It kind of resonates, if you are aware, there is a historical reference point to this, which is to say, I mean, that is a long story to cut it short. So, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill in 1943, and if you are aware, there was this massive famine in Bengal, and when I say Bengal, do not confuse it with the map of Bengal as it stands today. Bengal at that point of time in the 40s and in British India would involve a larger province that would comprise what now stands as Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. So, that would be the Bengal presidency. So, when I say Bengal, I mean the Bengal presidency. So, there was this huge massive famine in Bengal in 1943, and Winston Churchill is known to have like redirected, rerouted ships full of relief. There were relief there were food reliefs that were being sent, that were supposed to be sent from UK, and there were food reliefs that were being sent from other countries like US and Australia. Winston Churchill, what he did, he redirected, he rerouted those food cargoes like the ships containing food relief, and he redirected them to meet the needs of soldiers like the British soldiers who were serving the World War at that point of time. So, he made the Indians like the famine victims suffer. This is one of the worst hit famine ever in the history of British India, and that is precisely because of Winston Churchill's role in diverting the food relief elsewhere. So, Winston Churchill is known to have said, and there is documentary evidence, if you want you can pull it up, he is known to have said, and I quote, Indians are a beastly people with beastly religion, breeding like rabbits. This is something Winston Churchill is known to have said. So, that was his statement while absolving his role in orchestrating the man-made famine of Bengal in 1943. in which around 3 million Indians tragically died in want of food. So, he tried to absolve his role, his responsibility and the British liability more generally speaking. And he said, well, the Indians are beastly people, they have a beastly religion, they multiply like rabbits, I am not going to send any more food there, and he redirected and he rerouted and diverted the food grains. Yes, so there is this wonderful book called Madhushri Mukherjee, and it is called Churchill's Secret Wars, and it looks into the history of Bengal famine, and it kind of also looks into Churchill's role, responsibility, and how Churchill was responsible in creating this man-made famine. So, I am not diverting, I am not detouring and going in details in those sort of things, but what I am trying to draw again your attention to, like Churchill saying that Indians are beastly people with beastly religion multiplying rabbits, has kind of a thematic overlap. You see, when the encyclopedia entry reads that the Indians have promiscuous sex and they multiply like anything, and they try so that the number of their offsprings would match up with the number of their gods in the Hindu pantheon. So, you see a clear thematological overlap here, the idea of creating offspring and multiplying like anything. So, this thematic overlap can also be read in the light of what some media scholars would call like remediation, like you take things from one format of the media and you recycle it elsewhere and it acquires a new media. And with the internet now, it is very easy to like remediate contents over different media platforms. For example, you take a picture with your mobile phone, you float it on your Facebook or Pinterest, somebody downloads it, writes something on the top, kind of plays with it and uses a meme generator, makes a meme out of it and floats it elsewhere. So, you see the trajectory, if you call it the afterlife of images. Like you take when you have taken the image with your phone, you were not aware that the image would have such an afterlife. So, the image, it undergoes so many transformations, so many transformations, and it is afloat in other media in other forms, while it generates a range of divergent meanings, is something that is often referred to as remediation. And like this overlap, as I pointed, between Churchill's statement and the encyclopedia article, like one could like there is this history of reception, there is this what I am referring to as the thematic trope here, or the thematic overlap. It's kind of signals, it kind of draws our attention to this history of reception. So, someone who is aware of the history, someone who is aware of Churchill and his role in the Bengal famine of 1953, it is bound to strike in her mind, like one could easily relate these overlap. So, I'll keep aside the theme of remediation for a while, because there is one other point that I wanted to draw your attention to in the context of the encyclopedia article, after which I will come to remediation as yet another tool that will help you analyze the new media. But before we go into remediation, let me this is the first point, the first element of sarcasm that I drew your attention to is the promiscuous sex and the multiplying offspring part. The second point is, if you go back to the quotation, if you go back to the entry itself, it reads, some Silicon Valley based life form claims it to be a religion. This needs some sort of unpacking here. So, beside the facade of lulz, like making fun of, as I said, lulz is a tendency where you troll someone. So, behind the facade of lulz, there is a serious note to this point, and this is particularly interesting. The phrase Silicon Valley based life forms seems to refer to the rather huge number of Indian diaspora serving as IT professional in the Silicon Valley. And if you look into the demographics of the Silicon Valley, you would know there is a huge Indian IT professionals who serve as diaspora, serve the IT industry in the Silicon Valley. So, typically in the encyclopedia style approach, they have been reduced to life forms, they are not even humans, you understand. Rather than humans, they refer to as life forms. So, again, like this is not just offensive to the Hindus or a practitioner of Hinduism, this is equally offensive to an IT professional, for example, who has been now reduced to life form, not humans. So, along the same vein, the Brahmin, like look at the number of community, number of people this article or this entry is hurting, this entry is making fun of. So, along the same vein, the Brahmin has also been trolled, and if you look into the quotation, if you look into the quotation on your screen, which reads ahead of the starting few sentences that I just quoted, see what it reads. It says, during one of the many prayers, one of the Brahmins, after having a hearty meal, happens to let out a huge bark sounding something like Aum. The gods, who had until now been threatening and menacing, suddenly fall into a trance. The intelligent Brahmins are quick to catch on and realize the pacifying effect saying Om has on the angry gods. So, the Brahmins realize the effect of saying Om on angry gods. Not only that, the pacified gods also ask the Brahmins to try and improve the chant, again I think there is a mistake, improve the chant of the word, I think of is missing. The Brahmins then make it an official decree that whoever or only whichever Brahmin desires to please a god and wants the god to do his bidding has only to chant Om. Why waste time going Om, like the longer form which has been now abbreviated to a shorter form. So, you understand like the tenor of the entry here, it is making fun of the Brahmins, it is making fun of the IT professionals, it is making fun of in general the Hindu, the practicing Hindu. It is not political trolling, as you can see. Yeah, this is kind of making fun of everyone. So, this is not, as you see, necessarily targeted to one group or the other. So, this is not politically motivated, it tries to make fun of like people randomly, like any people whatsoever, it is making fun of randomly. So, the diasporic IT professional heads the status quo in terms of social respectability. I mean, IT people who are serving in the Indian IT professionals who are out there in the Silicon Valley, they command respect. I mean, there is on the top of the social hierarchy, if you say, inasmuch as the Brahmins are at the pinnacle of the casteist hierarchy in the orthodox Hindu worldview. So, you see this spectrum, this range of people they are making fun of. If the Brahmin is at the top of the casteist Hindu worldview, and the IT professional is in the top of the social status quo and kind of commands respect and so on and so forth. So, these two figures, the Brahmin and the IT professional, are equally made fun of. So, the problem in dehumanizing these two figures, if you read between the lines and if you read into the quotations very carefully, as I said, the IT professionals are referred to as life forms, and if you look into third last line of the Brahmin quotation here, it says whichever Brahmin. So, like whoever is something that you use in the context of a person, whereas whichever is you use in the context of a thing, like a non-living thing. So, in other words, these two figures who are on the top of these two set of status quoist hierarchies, otherwise respectable in the public imagination, is not so like. So, the problem in like the encyclopedia post actually dehumanizes these two figures. They are now being rendered as non-living entities. So, the problem in dehumanizing them is not so much with the categories per se, but with the cultural signification that we tend to ascribe to them. It's like in our imagination, and now you go back and think of notion of social construction and social constructivism, some of which we have already discussed. So, in the back of our mind, like we are already disposed to respecting the Brahmin or the IT professional. So, that is a kind of a social construction. We grow up respecting people from certain professional community, the doctor, the IT professional, the Brahmin, and so on and so forth. We do not respect people from certain other professional communities. So, it is a kind of a social upbringing, it is a disposition. So, not only does the article makes fun of the IT professional, the Hindu or the Brahmin and so on, it makes fun of our social construction. As in the reader, as I read through this encyclopedia article, I see that I am also being trolled, as is the common case, like the whole tendency to respect certain people from certain walks of life, certain professional communities, like that general tendency is also made fun of. Yes, so this is something you could read as an example of lulz or trolling, like making fun of. But the intent here is like they are making fun because they just want to make fun, like making fun is an end in itself. Unlike political hate speech, for example, the political hate speech, for example, comes with an intent to malign somebody, malign people from the contrary political opinion, contrary political camp, and so on and so forth. So, unlike the political hate speech, I mean this is also very specific to the new media or the social networking sites, that it is kind of innocuous, if I may call it, is kind of innocuous, innocent. So, this making fun is an end in itself. It does not want to achieve any political goal or political target, so to say, by making fun of or by trolling certain people. It, as I said, it makes fun of everyone in the same breath, and especially the people who are on the top of the social hierarchy and in the public imagination. They are making fun of literally anyone, though not without any political intent. So, you could read this as a good example of trolling or lulz, whatever you may call it. On top of like you could read this as an example of lulz or trolling, but also in this context let me remind you what the encyclopedia entry suggests is this kind of social behavior, this kind of trolling is also context specific, and that draws our attention to the phenomenon of netiquette. And I reiterate, as I said, like what is accepted in one platform might not be acceptable in the other.